Shades of Benga Online presents highlights from the story of Kenya's popular music in the 70-year period between the end of the Second World War and 2016. The series draws its inspiration from the definitive book Shades of Benga by Ketable Music.
Greetings, my name is Lucy Ilado. I'm a music journalist based in Nairobi, Kenya. Today, on the first episode of the Shades of Benga book series, we shall be discussing the pioneers of Kenyan popular music. On the panel, from my left, is Professor Larry Gumbe. Professor Larry Gumbe is a holder of a PhD degree from the Ohio State University in the US. He's a professional consulting engineer with the Engineers Board of Kenya after a long career as a professor in the engineering department at the University of Nairobi, and continues his academic work with the Technical University and Kenyatta University. Larry Gumbe has a keen interest in music since his childhood, is a lay music historian. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next is Mr. Tabu Osusa. Osusa has been a key part of the Eastern African music industry for close to 40 years as a music producer, songwriter, promoter, and band manager. He is the founding executive director of Ketable Music, established in 2007. Osusa is also one of the 5 music rights champions at the International Music Council and one of the jury members at the All Africa Music Awards. He is the lead author of the Shades of Benga book, The Story of Popular Music in Kenya 1946 to 2016. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Last but not least is Ngala Chome. He's a writer and historian, a regular commentator on social, cultural, and political issues in the country. His work examines the modern history of the Kenyan coast and has been published in academic and popular journals from the African Affairs, The Elephant, and Kwani. Ngala is currently completing a PhD program at Durham University in the UK. Welcome.
Thank you.
We should first start with Mr. Osusa. Perhaps you should give us a brief overview of Ketable Music, what you have done over the years, and how did the idea of publishing the Shades of Benga book come about?
Thanks, Lucy. Ketable Music is a not-for-profit organization established in 2007 with the core mission of carrying out research, documentation, promoting the diverse music traditions of East Africa. And we do this by actually, we have done it through 4 publications. The first one being Retracing the Benga Rhythm, where we talk about Benga music, which is the dominant genre of music in Kenya. And then the second one is Retracing Kikuyu Popular Music, which actually dwells on the origins of Kikuyu music, such as Mugithi and Momboko. And then we have Retracing the Funky Hits of Kenya. That is actually around about from boogie days, like the funky era of 1970s, and all clubs like the Starlight Club and so on and so forth. And then the last one was actually not really last because we still have the book. The other one is Retracing Songs of Protest, because all over the world, I mean, music always comes to save the day, where politicians fail. I mean, even during the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and even in the South African apartheid, it was always music.
Something also important to note is your work on archiving traditional music and dances in East Africa. Perhaps you can tell us about that?
Yeah, we do this through a program called Singing Wells, where we have a mobile studio, and we drive around East Africa trying to save or record traditional music before actually it literally disappears into thin air. So we've done that for almost 10 years. And actually, you can always follow us on that if you go to www.singingwells.org. We've recorded thousands of songs, recorded so many artists, and we're still continuing with the program.
So how did the idea to publish such a historic book come about?
Well, it was not really difficult to publish Shades of Benga, because we always believed that there was something lacking. You see, we wanted to have the book as a point of reference, especially for the youth, especially musicians who want to play music that is deeply rooted in the African sound. Because one of the problems that I keep on saying is that we have good musicians, but somehow we lack identity. As I was talking to my colleagues earlier on, that we as the generation baby boomers, we kind of did not pass on the baton to generation Y of my friend Ngala. So you see, like it is like a relay race, and we kind of broke the rule. The baton dropped. We keep on running. But and then we have even veered into other people's lane. Like if you really listen to a lot of music from Kenya now, we're running on the Nigerian lane. Some of us are running on the South African lane. Others are running on the Congolese lane, and many on the American lane. Okay. But our lane is empty.
It's been 3 years since the book was published, and I'm sure a lot of people have bought it. Have you been approached by young people really who show interest in the book?
No, they have. Not just have they shown interest in the book, but I've seen the way that the genres of music is really changing. They are beginning to include a lot of traditional based music, even when they are doing hip hop, which I think is a good thing. Maybe after 5 years, we shall all be doing like playing hip hop out of the Benga rhythms, or playing jazz out of Momboko. Or jazz out of Tarab. So I think this we've had a very good reception from the youth, and especially maybe that's your generation. Maybe you can tell us what you think about it in another another forum.
All right, Ngala, I think it would be interesting to hear from you as a historian why you think it's important to document the histories of music and dances, which of course are most are going into extinction.
Well, two things. One is kind of what Tabu has just said, that we need to kind of excavate, if you like, these musical traditions so that they begin to inspire music making from the perspective of my generation. That's number one. Number two is that, speaking as a historian in this case, you will find that a lot of our documentation or history focuses a lot on the political history of the country, and which has been actually referred to as the story of big men. There is not a lot of work on our social histories. There's not a lot of work on our cultural histories. There's certainly not a lot of work on the history of our music and our music making. And I think that's why such a project is very, very important.
According to the book, you have highlighted several genres that were very popular back in the 50s and the late 60s. So perhaps if you can give us your own opinion on what popular music is.
To me, popular music is music that is consumed across the country. If I talk about popular music in Kenya, I mean, like when Fundi Konde plays something and maybe comes from Malindi or Kilifi, somebody in Busia will also, I enjoy the music and identify with the music, as opposed to traditional form of music where it's only enjoyed in some particular region. Anyway, I'm not a musicologist, so probably they might have a different definition of the word popular. But to me, it's music that is consumed across the board, across the country.
Larry, as a music enthusiast, what's your definition of popular music?
Popular music to me is music which is consumed by a wide section of society. It is music which is appreciated and has got popular appeal. And popular music, I think, came with technology. When there was now technology for dissemination of the music. I think it started from the vinyl, when we could now distribute it, and then it came radio and other mediums as technology developed. Because you would appreciate that in antiquity, as Tabu has rightly said, the audience was small. And then the distribution of the music was also small because it is the group that somebody was playing to that would appreciate that music. Of course, when we started writing music, then we could distribute it in written form, but then it could just be played by somebody else. But the original music getting its wide audience then is a function of changing times and technology, in my view.
Thank you very much. So now let's listen to one of the first songs to have been recorded by Fundi Konde, titled Tausi, as performed by the Nairobi City Ensemble Band.
Tausi, ndege wangu wa fahari, ndege umekwisha mali, sasa wataka nini? Tausi, ndege wangu wa fahari, ndege umekwisha mali, sasa wataka nini? Wapita watu wawili waloleta uramali, sasa tuko mbali mbali. Wapita watu wawili waloleta uramali, sasa tuko mbali mbali. Sasa tuko mbali mbali. Tausi, ndege wangu wa fahari, ndege umekwisha mali, sasa wataka nini? Tausi, ndege wangu wa fahari, ndege umekwisha mali, sasa wataka nini? Wapita watu wawili waloleta uramani, sasa tuko mbali mbali. Wapita watu wawili waloleta uramani, sasa tuko mbali mbali. Sasa tuko mbali mbali. Waloleta uramani, sasa tuko mbali mbali. Wapita watu wawili waloleta uramani, sasa tuko mbali mbali. Sasa tuko mbali mbali. Sasa tuko mbali mbali. Sasa tuko mbali mbali. Sasa tuko mbali mbali.
Professor, taking us back to before World War II, how was the music scene like and what kind of music was being consumed?
Yes, it's very important to ask where we came from, because you see, musicians make history, but history also makes musicians. If you note, Kenya became a British colony sometime in the early 1900s. Before that, it was a British protectorate from 1890-something. And what was the nature of society? If you look at the society when colonialism was coming in, it was basically a coast which was ruled from Zanzibar, which had city-states and which had well-formed governments along the feudal system. The hinterland of Kenya had peasant farmers, basically. So the mode of production influenced the kind of musicians we had. The traditional musicians who played nyatiti, who played orutu, who played to a smaller audience amongst the peasant folks. At the coast, you had the taarab music and other forms of music, which were played by bands. The British embarked on a project called building the Uganda Railway. The Uganda Railway completely changed the character of Kenya. It allowed colonialism to entrench itself. It allowed urbanization.
Yes.
Many urban areas were created along the railway and by the railway, and as a consequence of the railway.
Yes.
And therefore, to get the workforce to work in the railway and other sectors which the colonialists were establishing, they needed a literate workforce. So they needed to have schools, which they allowed the missionaries to run for them. And in these missionary schools, they taught music. And the whites were also consumers, the settlers consumers of music. And them being consumers of music, they had bands which they imported to play music, which the blacks observed.
What style of music were these foreign bands playing?
At that particular juncture, they were playing the British music, I would suppose. The foxtrots and all that. There was yodeling. We have evidence to that. And therefore, this is what the whites were enjoying. And it was a segregated society. The blacks and whites did not mix to enjoy music together. So the blacks, when they got to urban areas, started urbanizing, and they also started becoming consumers of music. And being consumers of music, there were infrastructures which were developed by the colonial government along the railway authorities and the local authorities which were established, and actually even the central government, so as outlets of entertainment for the blacks.
Social halls.
Social halls and so on. And you started getting people like Mwachupa having a two-man playing for Africans in their drinking clubs. If you are old enough, I think some of those clubs survived until the 1970s when they were banned by Daniel Moi. So we started getting that kind of entertainment in Kenya. But the First World War allowed many soldiers to join the military, to travel abroad, and come back with music instruments and enjoyment of music. So after that, we started seeing accordion music becoming popular. And entering Kenya, entering the Kikuyu community, central part, entering the Western with accordionists in Luoland and so on. So this became important. They started recording this music. I think Tabu would probably know. The earliest recorded Kenyan music was which year? I mean, this popular guitar music.
I think I remember someone like Otuoma recorded in the 30s, the late
1930s.
Yes.
Yes. I remember his famous song called Ibrahim Odinga of 1930.
It was quite early.
78,
Right.
Yeah. So that started happening at that particular time. Lucy, they could not be radical in their singing because the outlets of where they are recording were controlled by the colonial government.
Yes.
The society was highly regulated and regimented into race categories of where you could live, what you could do, and what you could say was controlled by the colonial government.
Mr. Tabu, at what point did popular music now fully emerge in the Kenyan music scene?
You cannot get a full picture of popular Kenyan music without actually referring to World War II, because that's when the returning soldiers really came with all this array of instruments, like the acoustic guitar, or we call it here box guitar, the banjo, and the accordions. I mean, in a more popular sense, because it was now some sort of a revolution. They had the brass bands in the army, but now they started playing using the same instruments to play our traditional-based music. So it became like a different genre. And with the Afro-Cuban influence, so we started now getting like the rumba, like from Fundi Konde. And of course, as Prof was saying earlier, Fundi Konde was a trained musician, trained by the missionaries. So even before going to the World War, he could play the guitar, the flute, the clarinet. And I think that's maybe why he was chosen to join the war as part of the entertainment unit.
Now, looking at the book, most of the pioneers are coming from the coastal part of Kenya. Perhaps you should give us a brief overview of the history of the music of the coast, because most of us are familiar with Tarab music. And of course, that will direct another question to Mr. Tabu. Why is Tarab not among the most popular genres in the country? But we can start with you, Ngala.
Well, I mean, just to cite here, Professor, when he says that musicians make history, but also history makes them. First and foremost, it's a bit misleading when you talk of the Kenyan coast during those years, rather than maybe say East African coast or the Swahili coast or things like this. So because Zanzibar in this case is very much influential, not only politically but also culturally within that belt. Beginning in the mid-1920s, going towards the 1930s, you had at least two dominant cultural frames on the coast. One, of course, influenced heavily by Arab, Indian Ocean, Swahili kind of culture, Indian Ocean-looking culture, and one which was now beginning to be shaped by the missionary centers that had set up on the coast at this time for about 100 years, since the 1840s, the first missionary station at Rabai. And therefore, for a lot of people who could not enter the sort of Indian Ocean Swahili imagination, the missionary or African culture was kind of the place to go to and look at. And therefore, to seek inspiration even for music making.
Just to cut you short,
Sorry.
by African culture, what do you mean?
African culture in this sense is what at that time is described as indigenous, indigenous, native. These are some of these terms I'm not very enthusiastic about.
Okay.
But that was the meaning of African. And for a long period of time, for example, the people we now call Swahili were not seen as African and seen as Arabs in this sense.
Okay.
But also, between these divisions, between what was thought as African and what was thought as Arab, these were serious cultural divisions. And they did not only influence things as minute as what you eat, but also how you play music and the kind of cultural influences you get from the playing of your music. So on that other side, on the Indian Ocean, Swahili Muslim culture, Tarab emerged. But then on this other side, the Christian missionary centers produced different kind of music tradition that is looking not towards the Indian Ocean, but towards a kind of Western Cuban influence. And this is where someone like Fundi Konde emerges from. This is the cultural context from which Fundi Konde emerges from, which I think is very important to pay attention to.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's always a great honor to have intellectuals discussing such topics. For me, I think as a young person, I have learned a lot. Most of this history, like Ngala said, we are taught about the history of the country, the independence struggles and whatnot, but the history of music has not really been expounded on, especially in the curriculum.
Yes.
And I think this is a very important discussion that I'm looking forward to carry on in our next episode. And to play us out is the Nairobi City Ensemble performing Dereva Combo that was recorded by both Fundi Konde and Paul Machupa.
Ino ajali haikingiki astahilipo Mola mwenyewe. Ino ajali haikingiki astahilipo Mola mwenyewe. Ni chombo imara chenye dhamani kilichopasishwa Uingerezani. Ni chombo imara chenye dhamani kilichopasishwa Uingerezani. Kiliguruma likoni kikatiririka, wale pasenja wakafelia baharini. Kiliguruma likoni kikatiririka, wale pasenja wakafelia baharini. Naliona hivyo kwaherini, naliona hivyo kwaherini. jirani kwenye waganga na misafu zimepangana. Dereva kombo, ungama zako zimekwisha. Hapa Mombasa jirani wazikashirika. Dereva kombo, ungama zako zimekwisha. Hapa Mombasa jirani wazikashirika. Aliona hivyo, kwaherini. Aliona hivyo, kwaherini. Aliona hivyo, kwaherini. Aliona hivyo, kwaherini.
The journey through Shades of Benga continues. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on our social media platforms for the next episodes. Shades of Benga, the book, is available in all leading bookstores in Kenya. Get your copy for this and other stories in full.
Mambo vipi?